Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel Weaver. I'm actually Vice President of Sales for North America here at Cequence Security. Appreciates all of you in attendance and those of you that are going to watch after the fact. We have, I think, half an hour, 25 minutes, roughly. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Yes, we have 25 minutes.
Excellent. So I appreciate you all coming in. We had a lot of questions come through early on, asking and inquiring about API security, the attack surface, what it represents, what it means. Obviously, being a Cequence employee, I'm definitely going to speak to what it is that we do, how we differ from competition, how we view the market. That's really, really important today in light of this market being so new for everybody, big companies, small companies, it does not matter. So want to go through a couple slides and then want to tackle some of the questions that did come up because I think they're pertinent for today and really for this show this week. So Cequence Security, we're about 6 years old, VC funded. We are the leader, I would describe, in API security at large. Our solution set is built to help navigate and help manage and secure APIs and applications in general. But it's our innate ability to discover, detect potential bad actors, and obviously mitigate and defend against those attacks that really set us apart from other folks. So important slide here. And this was some of the questions that we saw that I was reading about. Where do I start? Where do I go? Outside of getting into weeds and talking, the OWASP top 10 and BOLA and how those are problematic, it's interesting. Over the last 6 months, I will say that API security has definitely taken on a new outlook for organizations. Why? Primarily because API security, even though everybody knows what API is, everybody knows what it stands for, everybody knows what they kind of represent within an organization and for the business, it's an area that has been largely neglected from a security perspective. From a Cequence perspective, we're looking at speed, automation, business competition in the marketplace. And, unfortunately, what's come of the last couple of years is that APIs have become the number one attack vector for bad actors globally. Any vertical, any size company, they are the number one source because they are the one area within the security posture of an organization that really hasn't been managed. There also hasn't been a lot of solutions out there in place to help protect them. But from Cequence perspective, there's a journey that takes place. No organizations, typically, unless you're just a massive, all the money in the world, most organizations are just trying to figure out, what do I need? How much is it going to cost? Who's going to own it internally? How hard is it to deploy? How long does it take to deploy? And there are certain kind of steps involved in how we at Cequence ideally understand and provide our solution to help you. So first and foremost, this is the most common thing. It's understanding the external attack surface, understanding the public-facing APIs that are vulnerable to attacks. But number two, I'll tell you, is probably the most common thing that we hear about today. The most number one requested item that we're looking at, it's data governance, it's runtime inventory, it's I don't know how many APIs I have. And I can digress for just 30 seconds and tell you that we speak to a lot of companies, big and small, and any company, any size, if you ask them how many APIs do you have in your environment, no one seems to know. And so that's a really big red flag, right, when it comes to it. So that's a big focus for organizations. Next, we talk about attacks and we talk about attack prevention. So death and taxes, the one constant in life. I can tell you that attacks are also the third constant as far as I'm concerned. Regardless of what solution you have in place, Cequence or otherwise, or solutions, you go best of breed. The one thing that is inevitable that will continuously happen regardless of what you have in place is that attacks will continue to come. And yes, you should absolutely have a better understanding of your environment and APIs and how they are built, how they are rolled out, how they are managed. But at the same time, that attacks are more frequent now than they were yesterday, are going to be more frequent tomorrow than they are today, and they're more sophisticated. So how do you address that component of it, knowing that APIs are the top attack vector? And then, of course, build-time security, right? Still important. DevOps moves at the speed of light. Digital transformation, whatever we want to call it these days. But the point is that applications are being built faster. They're being broken apart into microservices so that they can easily be adjusted and updated. And so when we're talking about build time, it's building applications, building APIs that are more compliant upfront, that are more secure upfront, right? Nothing's perfect science. They're not going to be completely thorough, but at the end of the day, building it as prepared as you can up front before running it through QA, throwing it over the wall into production, and ensuring that. So when you have that, what do I look like outside the wall? How do I manage, or how do I identify what I need today? How do I address attacks that are going to be inevitable and ongoing? And of course, how do I build and prep my APIs from day one? Right? These are all components that Cequence helps with and does a great job doing it within our platform. So last slide here, really important slide. So application security in general. I won't even say API, but application security in general. Think of it as two sides to a coin, right? There's two components to it, right? You have that bad actor, fraud, automation. Bot is a word that everybody knows, and either people are in love with that and are part of it, or they don't really care about it. Automation, I think it's a more appropriate word in this day and age. Automation represents technology advancement. Think of bad actors and botnet attacks that were up and down and left, right, 3 or 4 years ago. And today, it's a Willy Wonka elevator, and they can go any direction they want. They can do anything. They're AI. Scary proposition, and they're only getting better. That's the side of the coin that's vital, that's important to API security. The other side of the coin, of course, is that it's API management in general. And here's the important thing: data governance, operational hygiene. How many APIs do I have? How many factions of the OWASP top 10 do I address? Vulnerability, identifying that, sensitive customer data or company data, traversing an API that should not be, helping identify shadow IT, shadow API, because no matter how hard we try, when you have dev working as fast as they do in security, a lot of the time the communication isn't there. So security's got to have that ability to step up and identify these type of applications that are rolled out into production they're unaware of. All of that data governance, operational hygiene today is mission critical to every company. In 2 to 3 years, that will become commoditized. Every single company on the planet is going to have the ability to tell you, I know how many APIs I have. I know if I'm OWASP top 10 compliant. I have a good grasp of shadow IT, shadow API. Today, no one seems to have it, right? That's what we see. But in 2 to 3 years, everyone will have it. The one constant that will continue to grow and get worse is going to be the attack component of it. And that's why these are one and the same. These are intertwined. They are glued at the hip, right? No matter where you start. So
Daniel, can I take a
pause right there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Actually, could you move your slide over to slide 2?
Oh, this one?
Right now we see slide 1.
Oh, that's weird. I was going through that.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay, you saw this one the whole time?
Yes.
Okay, I was going through it, and it was moving for me. So really quick, you guys. So this was the journey that I was referring to: the attack surface discovery, understanding your external-facing vulnerability, the risk and compliance, data governance, operational hygiene, the attack detection, the prevention. It's not just the acknowledgement of an attack, but truly having context around it, knowing their intent, their goal, those things, and of course, build-time security. This is a journey. This doesn't mean that you have to start at step 1 and you finish at step 5. We see a variety of companies, like I said, are really leaning towards that governance, that compliance, which does make sense. But we do have other companies that are more worried about attacks because they are actually affecting the bottom line. They're affecting the overhead. They're affecting so many different things. And that is the core requirement for an organization. Everybody's going to be slightly different, but these are all composites to what needs to be addressed. And then this was that third slide I was referring to, that two sides of the AppSec coin, right? Where you have absolutely this API governance, hygiene, shadow IT identification, understanding am I compliant to those OWASP top 10s, but also you need a platform that can give you that protection, that identification, that telemetry around attacks to give you a better understanding. You hear about false positives, right? You can't be given half information, partial information, something looks bad, and go ahead and make that unilateral, I'm going to block it. you need context. You need to understand what exactly they're trying to do, how they're moving, what they're trying to get out of your organization. The majority of cyber attacks in 2022 are not trying to take down the world. They're mostly in it for a buck or two, the bulk of them. And so when you think about it, most organizations, they're getting attacked to be leveraged somehow, some way for profit. And that's what's really difficult for organizations to address. So sorry about that. I don't know what moved over for me, but not for you. But I'll go back, and Elizabeth, with our time remaining, I can answer some questions.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, there wasn't much interruption actually, and I think the part 2 was a good summary of the slides. One of the things, looking through the questions, the one that stands out to me from the ones that we sort of picked out was, what are the most common misconceptions in API security?
Common misconceptions in API security. Common misconceptions of API security is that buying or investing in a solution that gives them some coverage is good enough. It's interesting. We have different conversations with different organizations, everything from CISOs to individuals part of the SOC, and the misconception is, if I have simply just a runtime inventory product, I'm going to be protected. Not at all. Not even close. What it does is it gives them invaluable data and information and management of their APIs that they didn't have before, which is incredibly important. However, regardless, as I mentioned earlier, regardless of what you have in place to as a gateway or inventory, or identifying potential vulnerability, or identifying shadow IT and APIs, regardless of those, the attacks once again are going to continue to evolve and advance. 5 years ago, what a traditional automated attack looked like, it wasn't really automated. It was almost manual labor in that sense. But today, I'll use the word variant because of the pandemic that we've been in. But we see variants of attacks, and the way that they can redefine themselves and really literally retool on the fly is scary. So the whole concept, the misconception of, okay, I have inventory, I know how many APIs I have and where they are. I understand that I'm identifying new APIs and new apps that were just launched into production that that DevOps wasn't able to communicate. I know that I'm somewhat compliant here with almost all of us top 10. I'm good. Not at all. The attacks will continue. They will get more advanced, and you will still have issues as the business continues to put out fires. So that's a big one that we see.
Fair enough. We actually have a question in the chat. So I'll go ahead and read that one out. To stop an attack you might see, do you need to signal another solution like a firewall, WAF, CDN, etc.? Can your solution do this within your application? And a follow-up, what is upfront setup like?
Yeah, great question. So, all right, so we can talk about differentiators, and I'm not going to mention any names with other API vendors because there's a lot of them out there. And by the way, the bulk of them are actually pretty solid. They address, once again, concerns that organizations are trying to help themselves with. Runtime inventory keeps popping up in my brain. Attack surface, external attack surface keeps popping up in my brain because these are ones that we see over and over again in talking to people. However, detection mitigation, our pedigree at Cequence comes from that kind of that pedigree of addressing automated attacks against a business. You can call them business logic abuse, you can call them fraud, you can call them whatever you want to. It's all the same thing. But our solution, because of our pedigree within the platform, we're actually the only vendor today, we're the only vendor that actually has native mitigation within our platform. And what does that mean? That means that other vendors that are in the API space, when they detect something suspicious, not full detail information of what was the credential being used in an account takeover attack, and can you correlate that to the such and such breach that happened a year ago? There's a lot of those. Can they do that? Not in detail. They can't tell you the intent of an attack, and those other vendors require they mitigate, but they're third-party technology reliant. What does that mean? I have to send this IP RESTful API it out to your WAF. And hopefully the WAF's looking at the same traffic feed, because if it's not going to be able to block it. But they are dependent on other technologies in your environment to do it. Cequence, unique because of our pedigree. comprehensive platform that gives you that journey from start to finish, but within our platform has the ability to go deep into the weeds on potential bad actors and what they're trying to do to bubble that up to the surface, and also, of course, natively mitigate within the platform. So we are not reliant. Their best of breed is awesome, but at the end of the day, right? If you ask most execs, if they can have a complete solution that works and delivers and scales all in one, that's always going to be preferred because of budget, expense, and simplicity, lack of friction. All those things are business ideologies, right? But for us, yeah, we absolutely do not require anything else. Everything is solely built into our platform, and that really does set us apart. It makes us a lot easier and a lot faster to deploy.
Thank you for that. I think one thing that parallel to that would be time, right? It's not just budget, it's also time. How much time do you think that something like this takes to set up, and or what's the long-term sort of time expense put on a program like this?
Yeah, wonderful question. So everybody, how are you sized? How are you priced? What should I be budgeting for, right? These are all questions that we get. Obviously, I can give you the simple answer and say, well, if you're a small company, it's going to be really fast. And if it's a big company, it's going to take longer. Of course, always the case. For us, due to our lack of integration into code to identify bad attacks, because we're not dependent on client-side telemetry, we have this huge component within our solution set of machine learning and AI. That's a big benefit for us to be able to deploy on that automation side of the house. The API side of the house, pretty easy, pretty standard. I mean, the wonderful thing about that use case of external public-facing API risk and vulnerability within a day, right? That's something that we can do within a day and give you solid information. In terms of getting stood up, within the org and being able to identify your runtime, internal inventory, a few days. We are unique in that we're flexible. We have very large accounts that are deployed enterprise-wide. Not a lot of people can say that. We're talking Fortune 5 deployments scaled enterprise-wide. We have the ability to run on-prem within your environment, your private cloud. We also offer, of course, SaaS, easy button, single tenant, your data in there. All can be stood up fairly quickly. Does that mean that we're going to be up and running in production in a massive company like Amazon in a matter of a week? Of course not. But big companies are traditionally slightly more careful. They take steps to ensure that nothing falls offline for them. And so I'll tell you, more often than not for us, commercial size, mid-tier companies, a week or two max. For us, we do a really thorough job. We have a CS team, a data science team, CQ Prime team that help build out a roadmap for deployment to address the concerns that matter most. Priorities differ from company to company. Even though we might see them as the same from a Cequence perspective, in reality, there are certain items that they're going to care about first. So we try to adjust accordingly. All architectures are different. Yes, they're made up of the same vendors and setups, but everybody's slightly different. So we do our best to be nimble, to adjust, and from a speed perspective, how long should it take? Honestly, it shouldn't take long. Any API security platform that takes a while to deploy at scale is not something that I would want to work with.
Fair enough. So I think, earlier in the presentation, I think you pretty much touched on this, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to just, as we're coming up on time, what are some of the essentials, must-haves for API security that somebody can walk away from and say, tonight, this will make my day end on a positive note?
Yeah. Great question. So I would tell you, so the requirements for you, I gave you that kind of journey, and that honestly is the full-fledged. In 3 years, this will be the norm. This will be the standard. Like I said, runtime inventory, OWASP, that'll be commoditized. Every company will have that in a matter of a couple of years because it'll be standard part of their security posture, period. Where do I go from there? Now, what is API security? And that's the portion that we really like to focus on, which is the attack vector, because that is the constant that will never change no matter what you do. But, to your question, requirements. We we have a list of requirements that we continually update and continually build. And you can reach out to us. I think it's events at Cequence.ai. But the bottom line is that the starting point for an organization, unless I have a project, I have budget, my CEO is telling me to do this now. In reality, it's about what are the requirements? What don't I know today? Let's assume you're getting attacked. Fine, everybody knows that. But where do I start as a company to better understand, how I protect myself? Okay, well, it is about understanding your environment. How many APIs you have? How OWASP Top 10 compliant are you? Understanding the API environment that you're unaware of course, which is your shadow. It's a good starting point in addition to that public facing vulnerability scan that organizations can do. We have a unique proposition around that. But those are good starting points. Some organizations will be focused on DevOps first. We've seen that on occasion, more often not so much, but it really depends. DevOps is built for the business. As competitive as businesses are these days, that's why they're moving so fast to build these applications. But you need a starting point. And so I always kind of lean towards that data governance, operational hygiene, address the attacks now, starting point. That's the best way to go. But business requirements wise, we can help you. I mean, it's a matter of putting those pen to paper, put them down, understand what you chronologically prioritize. And that's the way to do it. We can certainly help you out there.
Awesome. So I think we're up on time. Thank you very much. I'll hold out one more minute to see if there's one more question in the chat by any chance. All right. It looks like you did a very thorough job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for attending. And I know you're recording this, so I'm sure we'll put it up later.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care.